Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to a brand new series on the channel, going to be called This Week in CSGO. I'm sure if you guys did not see my last couple episodes ago, I promised you guys I would probably start this series around this week. It's a brand new series on the channel. It probably looks very familiar to you, not only in length, but as well as layout, as things like Richard Lewis and Thorne do of By the Numbers. I think it's about time with the amount of time I've spent, I guess you could say, analyzing CSGO news to give you guys my thoughts and opinions. So kind of an overall breakdown of the series, and we'll get into it. And first off, most importantly, it's a very open environment. I'm right next to the drive out here, the lanes and the highway. So if you guys hear cars and motorcycles every now and again, do forgive me. It's going to be in a very open layout. So I promise you guys, if you hear a motorcycle rolling by, that's my environment, not your environment, although it may be happening wherever you guys are from. On top of that, I know my thoughts and opinions maybe don't matter to some of you guys, so please don't watch this. And very thirdly as well, I do want to say this is my thoughts and opinions, but again, it's also promoted by you guys. So you guys can always ask questions in the comment section. I think in the future, I'll try and figure out a layout where I can actually answer some of you guys' questions that you do post in the comments. I want to be very interactive. And on top of that as well, for all of you hardcore gamers out there, people who are on long drives or ever just want to listen to some background noise, this is for that kind of people. So I know you guys probably don't want to see my face for an hour or more every week or so, but I want to do this every week or bi-weekly. And very lastly, a point to make, this will be also kind of a avenue of me to actually make a little bit of extra income. This is not going to be donation based, but I do want to incentivize some of you guys who want to actually support me as well. There will always be, for this series, a donation link in the description. Don't feel like you have to donate. This series will continue no matter what. I think I've always wanted this kind of event, this kind of outlet to voice my opinions on things that are going on in CSGO. If you guys want to donate, feel free to, but you do not have to. This series will continue no matter what, and I thank you guys for your support, especially for all of you guys who are, of course, coming from my weekly CSGO news episodes. You guys have supported me, and luckily enough, there will be a sponsor on the main channel right now, so I do appreciate that very much. And as always, let's get into it. Also, very newly as well, you guys are going to probably see a few cuts throughout the episode as well. I can't memorize all the information, but I do like to have some thoughts split up, because if I do say something that's kind of just stupid or idiotic and I look back and say, maybe I shouldn't have said that, I will be having cuts. And also, most importantly, there will be timestamps down below. So for every article, everything I cover, there will be timestamps for each subject. I know there's a lot of people out there who make these long videos and don't post timestamps, which is kind of a drag, and I'm not enticing enough to actually, of course, do that. So here we go into, of course, this week of CSGO episode number 1. I hope you guys all enjoy it. Let's aim for 37 likes and I'll continue the series. So of course, there's been a lot going on this past week, especially in CSGO, that I've wanted to talk about, and I will be sipping caffeine throughout the entire episode and hopefully not be talking too fast for you guys. But again, the first thing I want to talk about mainly was, of course, our latest CSGO update. As of last week was actually Panaroma UI, the future of CSGO. Many of you guys are well aware we can now go back into the default CSGO layout. Unfortunately enough, it will be for a limited time. And I say unfortunately because this is the first time in my history of CSGO. I've been playing for about 3.5, 4 years now, but as of late, I haven't been playing too much. And so for you guys who want to know my background, I think at very best, I'm probably a high gold player. I've been boosted to the MG or MG2 and almost LE ranks, but again, I say boosted by my friends out there who are part of my Discord chat. So I was boosted. I'm probably a high gold player, and I haven't had the time to play as much as I wanted to as of late. But when the Panaroma UI update did finally hit, and I will be getting back into CSGO as I figure out my job and my hours, I finally realized, wow, this is the game I fell in love with, this layout. The look of the game was the game I fell in love with. Now, I do, of course, appreciate the future of the game, where Panaroma UI is going. And definitely, if we go towards, of course, the new source engine that's allegedly coming out sometime in the near future, 2019 or 2020, it's the future of the game, and I think we need to adapt to that. I came from a RuneScape background, so if you guys know the history of RuneScape, it was first the old school RuneScape, then it became RuneScape, then it was EOC Evolution of Combat, and now there's currently RuneScape 3 and old school. The game has to adapt, it has to evolve to actually keep staying alive, although some of these updates in the future we're going to see are going to hurt the fan base, as well as maybe some will actually improve it. So I think Panaroma UI is definitely the future. If you guys disagree, well, unfortunately enough, you're probably going to be one of those people who actually leave the game right now, which we're seeing a bit of. I could go off into a tangent of what we've seen so far currently in CSGO. Unfortunately enough, you guys know with the whole gambling scene, what that's done to the game itself. And of course, we've had over the past 3 months, the lack of operations, the influx of cases, which have unfortunately enough tended themselves to the numbers we see right now, which I believe are stabling out. I think we've seen kind of a consistency over the past 2 months or so, but earlier this summer we saw, of course, the massive hurt we saw to the game, especially with gambling being put to an end, which people saw as a great thing, people saw as a bad thing. I guess we'll see how it overall affects the game in its future. But as of right now, I think we've stabilized around 400,000 players online per day, which is definitely still one of the top Steam games. And I still think the game has a huge future. And what I mainly want to put that on is Panaroma UI does add to this, and that's the viewership function of the game. So for all of you guys who think Panaroma UI is a terrible update, please leave your feedback down below as to why. There's going to be the kinks, there's going to be the bugs. It's definitely the future of CSGO, and I hugely approve of that. Now, with that update, though, came some very unique things. We saw a new Desert Eagle animation, which I think is very cool to add to the game. I think those are the subtle things the game definitely needs. There are a few weapons out there where if of course you inspect them enough, their secret animations do come out. A new Deagle animation was actually coming out as well, which is pretty cool. A nice little touch that no one no one looks too strongly at, and it definitely doesn't impact the game in a negative way. So good for you, Valve. And on top of that, though, unfortunately enough, it was partnered with our latest case. This is actually the longest gap we had since our last case as well. I believe it was close to 6 months, but not quite that 180-day mark. I think it was 160 to 170 days. So the longest gap in CSGO history we've seen between cases, and that was the Horizon case. Now, I'm not here to complain, but I think I can actually do so in these episodes because they're an hour long, if not more than that. And you guys probably came here for some good things to talk about, and these are debatable topics, so you guys have always have the right to actually comment down below. You can dislike all you want. This is an interaction, so I want to know what you guys think. I cannot respond to every comment, but I love seeing them, and I definitely want some comments about the Horizon case because I think it's pretty much a trash compilation of skins out there. Now, I talked about this in my video. There was plenty of dislikes on that video. I think 5 to 1 like to dislike ratio about that, where I talked that it seems to be Valve kind of just taking their dump skins now, and it almost seemed like we had 6 months and people expected a lot better skins. And I do understand there's two sides to this coin. First of which, there are going to be a lot of repeat skins because we've had so many cases by now. In the evolution of CSGO, it makes sense. You cannot have a different artwork for every skin. But when it comes to this last case, we saw several similar skins on the same weapons. I mean, we had the M4, we had the sawed-off shotgun, we had the Nova, all looking very, very similar. And I might show you guys on screen if you guys haven't seen them already. And you'd have to think that you have 6 months to choose skins. Choosing the skins in these cases is probably one of the easier things to do because everyone on the Steam community market is trying to, of course, put their skins in the game. You think of all the cool skins out there, it would be easiest to try and defer those skins from other ones we've had in the past. But again, that's not my biggest problem with this case. My biggest problem came, of course, with our 4 brand new knives. And I understand, and I hope you guys understand that I do understand the positives of this. A new case before the major, that's probably a pretty good time for Valve to do this. It's a big money grab in my own opinion, especially when you think about it. When I worded it in the video, it kind of caught my attention. The way I worded it, I thought I put it pretty well. And I'm not trying to brag at all. God, I sound like a douche. But every time we've had a really good knife in the past, it's been one released, one knife at a time. We had the Huntsman knife, we had the Butterfly, we had the Shadow Daggers. Shadow Daggers probably not your best example because they were known as the butt plugs, not your best looking knife. But the Bowie knife had a great release, right? It was a huge, brand new knife, a gigantic knife, and it was released by itself in a case. Then we had gloves. Gloves by themselves, I guess you could say gloves every time they're released now. Technically, there are one set of gloves, but now there's so many varieties, you can't really compare those apples to oranges. But now all of a sudden we have, ever since doing one knife in a case as a release, now we have 4 knives jumbled up, just crunching up. I wish I had crumbled paper, just trash, and just toss them into a case. And you have to question why they would do that, right? It's an ultimate cash grab. You have 4 subpar knives as compared to the Bowie knife being one great knife. You put in 4 subpar knives. You don't have to double check them. You can just chuck them all into a case and say, whatever. I think it's a terrible idea. The Talon's a ripoff of the Karambit. The Navajo is pretty much a ripoff of the Butterfly. Then we have the Stiletto, which is pretty much a 1960s, 70s mobster's knife, which doesn't have enough room on for a skin pattern. And then we have the Ursus, which looks terrible. I mean, the default handle. But again, you know what? An update's an update. You can't. But the thing that makes me the most upset about this is there are people that like it, but I think I can say confidently the majority of us did not like it. They were average skins. The AK-47 was pretty cool. The M4 was pretty cool, but the rifle skins are always the best skins anyway. And there were 4 subpar knives. And I know you guys, some of you do disagree with me, but especially based off their current prices. Of course, prices will go down in the future. In my own opinion, the 4 knives all sucked. There was not one. Maybe the Talon was actually decent. None of them were above average. So that kind of sucked to see, but overall, I think it was a positive update. I actually titled that video. The video title, I think, was what caused a lot of the dislikes, not my opinions or my whining about the knives. I said the last CSGO update sucked or was awful, but the Panaroma stuff was awesome, and the D0 stuff was awesome. Everything besides the knives in the new case was pretty cool, and I cannot wait for the future of CSGO. As of me recording, we have no operation released. It's still been a pretty extensive time since our last operation. I think that would have been a really cool thing to see, an operation then followed just after the major, but that could have had conflicting interests as well. So I think the ultimate goal, I will forgive Valve on this terrible case if we see this case, the 4 new knives, we have the major for Faceit. I could go off into a tangent about Faceit, the opportunities they have as a company over there with the stickers and their first technical major. The overall goal, though, would be, of course, the case, the major, and then right after the major, operation. Boom, that's instant growth. That's a great way to, of course, not only integrate Panaroma UI into an operation with its gameplay. Oh, that's amazing. For a new player to come out and actually have an operation with missions to play out the game mode in and kind of get a feel for the game with, perfect, perfectly timed, and hopefully some new game modes. Obviously, with last operation, we had Wingman mode stay. I would love to see a third game mode. And then I guess there's other people out there who say, here's a perfect situation, Jake. The case, the major, maybe an operation, and with the operation, survival mode or battle royale mode, which I can't really disagree with. And I'm not going to probably go off on this talk right now because I think it can be for a future episode when I have a lack of news throughout the week. But I am curious what you guys think about that. A possible battle royale mode, a possible survival mode. I think survival mode would probably be best because I don't want to really interfere with the BR scene right now. But I think CSGO, Valve could do a great job with that. Obviously a great history of games out there. You could criticize a lot of their moves they've done in the past, but I think they could really knock down and solidify a BR or survival mode. And that'd be a great off-tangent mode to have to actually practice your CSGO skill. Right now, I have no motivation to play CSGO, and it's not because of cheaters. I think that's the main excuse out there right now, but it's because I don't really have too much time, and it takes a lot of time to dedicate to your aim and game sense. Game sense is one thing. I think if you play CSGO for the few years, you can get a general feel of all the maps because maps have not really changed ever since 4 or 5 years ago because we don't really play competitive pool maps. Even then, if we did, it doesn't really, let's be honest, no one really plays competitive maps outside the general map pool, myself included, so game sense is pretty decent. Learning smokes to a degree is difficult, but aim, for me at least, as a rookie player, is the hardest part. So if I can have a game mode out there that I can actually practice my aim in and have fun with, that would be perfect. But moving on from that, guys, I think it was overall a pretty good update. I hope Valve takes advantage of their situation right now, and we're going to move into our next, our next segment out there. And again, really quickly, if you guys are still listening, I am trying to figure out a layout where I can actually stream this. I do want to quickly apologize, though. If I do stream this, I cannot listen to the chat at all. I am one of those guys out there. I get distracted so easily. If I do stream this, guys, I will not respond to donations. I will not respond to the chat. Because I will wait till after the video concludes to talk to you guys because if I go off and actually look at the chat, I will get so distracted. So I do apologize in the future if I do stream this content and I don't pay attention to you guys. I care about you. I care about your opinion, but I can't respond to everyone. It would just throw me off onto so many different side roads. But moving on, I do want to talk about North American struggles, and definitely a topic that needs probably some caffeine before I get into it. And you guys probably know a lot about this. So of course, over the past few months, we've finally finalized the MiBR roster, acquiring Stewie 2K and of course Tark. The MiBR roster, formerly SK Gaming, have seen their decent struggles over the course of the past 3 months. If you guys have seen the new HLTV rankings, they are now a number 7 team, I believe. Definitely the rift between the good teams and the fall-off teams in that top 7. We'll go over rankings probably a bit later. MiBR finally finalizing that roster with Tark and Stewie. Still have not produced any decent results in my own opinion, but alongside that, we've seen more North American struggles with inconsistency as well as just finalizing rosters. And this first comes up with Cloud9. Obviously, most notably a team who has not finalized their full roster for the major. As of me recording this today, it's actually Wednesday, August 8th. By the time you guys see it, it's going to be Saturday or Sunday, but I think they just confirmed today Sticko, which I think is a great pickup for the future of the roster. According to Decay, other sources out there, no surprise, it will be Sticko from Mouse Sports as their stand-in 5th member, at least until after the major. He might not be a permanent member, but definitely going forward for the major, he will be their 5th member. So that does kind of finalize your roster going forward for Cloud9. A Cloud9 roster who has not done done too much together, and it really kind of goes to show you where we're at right now with North American CSGO, when one of our top organizations a few months ago now has an unsolidified roster. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the Cloud9 roster is still powerful with Russian Automatic, but I think there's a lot of doubt right now around American Oppers, and of course Skadoodle being one of them. Every Reddit comment you read is going to be about replace Skadoodle. Skadoodle needs to retire already. He's the replace Skadoodle with JDM, replace Skadoodle with Cirque, which I think Cirque would be a great option for the team, but he's currently, I believe, on Rogue, or NRG. So there's a lot of debate right now. MiBR, you could argue, new roster. Cloud9, new roster. Liquid, a team who struggles severely with inconsistency. The team we saw at E-League Premier for the quarterfinals and semifinals was not the same team we saw at ESL Cologne. Two polar different teams. And if you guys were there, it was all the more surprising because at E-League Premier, where they placed second to Astralis, the best team in the world by far and away, they got rocked and rolled in the finals. But still, throughout that, before that, I think it was in the semifinals, they beat Na'Vi 2-0, and they looked amazing. And that was the same day Taco lost his dad, which puts it into perspective for you. And he wasn't even the team's best. He was I think the second bottom fragger. That was a team who played hard. And I don't know if it was because that instant. I don't know if they just clicked against Na'Vi. I think Na'Vi notoriously, historically speaking, struggles against Liquid no matter what. Simple's old alma mater in there. But Liquid is by far and away America's best team heading into the major, and that should be worrying if you guys hear that, because they are heavily inconsistent. I cannot wait for the major qualifier. We got some heavy-hitting teams there. But for American teams at the major, American teams, just to clarify, there's always so many comments. Jake, you said North American teams. MiBR is not North American. I get it. I'm sorry. Sometimes I misspeak. I misspeak a lot if you guys are avid viewers of the channel. But we have Liquid by far and away our best. Then we have, debatably, Cloud9 and MiBR are pretty close, but MiBR is a better roster and should be going forward as well because they have a finalized team and they have definitely better talent. So we're going to put Liquid on top, MiBR second. Those are our two best American teams at the major, followed by Cloud9, the broken roster. And then I think pretty far below them will be, of course, Rogue and Complexity, who outfought NRG to make the major, and I'm so disappointed about it. I already talked about in a video, though, NRG is the third best American team, and they were the best American team at the major qualifier. And the choke was real, and I love the guys over there. Cirque, one of the best up-and-coming oppers I've ever seen. The guy can top fragment no other. Clutch situations no other. Amazing to see that performance at IEM Shanghai. If you guys did see that, I talked about in a video. They 2-1 HR. They 2-0 Tyloo convincingly. And they also beat, who was the other team they 2-0 there? Gambit. Gambit, a whole other topic though. But still, those are all top 20 teams and all teams who will be at the major. NRG beat them all pretty convincingly, besides HR, who didn't have Woxic. But still, that's the North American situation right now. It's not looking good. The North American situation, whatever you want to call it. And then you have the European side of things. I think a lot of the European teams obviously are going to take a lot of those major spots, but I can't wait. Either way, those are the North American struggles. I don't think there's any recommendations right now fully to actually fix the scene. I know there's a lot of talk out there about Skadoodle needing to retire. The Cloud9 roster, what I've heard behind the scenes is not stuff I really want to say about Cloud9's org, but all I'll say, I'll leave this topic going for a future time. All I'll say is what I've heard about the Cloud9 situation is publicly is a totally different picture from what it is inside, which would make sense because of what they've seen over the past 6 to 8 months, ever since losing Shroud and Nothing, and then losing Tarek and Stewie, and you think there's nothing going on behind the scenes that might make these players want to leave or might make the players who played with these guys just not like them. There's definitely stuff going on there that I've heard. Can't confirm, but that's where America sits right now. We've always struggled in CSGO. I'm not trying to be rude. I love watching American CSGO. It's just the truth. And I think right now we might be in our biggest lull period ever. Now let's talk about Virtus.pro though. Virtus.pro, of course, most recently acquiring Snatchy from AGO in place of Snacks, who of course went to Mouse Sports. Virtus.pro is a team who I continue to question. I don't think it's going to be anything special at the major, although there's always that hope, right? And there's always that, they surprised us all, and they finally got they finally made playoffs or something like that. I can always see that happening, but I don't think Snatchy is going to be the answer. When we saw Mihu join the team in place of Taz took a short break from CSGO, we all thought, okay, Mihu from Kingwin, rising star, much improved from Taz. Taz took his break, came back to Kingwin. Kingwin hasn't done anything really sufficient either, but I think Taz, it's been cool to see him actually enjoying CSGO. I'm not really sure where he sits right now after they they had a chance to make the major. I wouldn't say they barely missed it, but they had a chance for sure. So we thought Mihu was going to be a huge improvement, right? Statistically speaking, results speaking, saw nothing. Nothing major happened. This to me is a strikingly similar situation. Could be wrong. Maybe Snatchy's a huge breakout player, but I don't think he's that big of an improvement from Morel's where you're going to think, oh my gosh, this is the roster. It just doesn't have the same ring to it, right? You can't mimic a roster who stayed together for so long in CSGO history. I think we need to take a minute to actually give these guys credit where it's due, because I don't want to talk trash about Virtus Pro without actually acknowledging their past in CSGO. The longest standing CSGO roster they had, with Taz and Snacks back in the roster, the longest standing CSGO roster in CSGO history, let alone they did it and they were at the top. Never before in CSGO has a team, a 5-man team, stayed together as long as they did. What was it, four-ish years? And do what they do. And never in history will we see a team stay together as long as they did and do what they do. I highly doubt it. MiBR, there's no chance these guys stay together for 4 years. There's just no chance. Even MiBR, even SK Gaming 2016, 2017, with all their success, that 5-man roster only stayed together for 2 years. They've made their small changes. Just think about that. To put it into perspective for all of you guys, and again, I'm not a pro player, my opinions don't matter, but let me give you guys an analogy in my own personal life. One of my good friends out there, arguably one of my better friends, one of my best friends, Noah, my college roommate. For all of you long-term viewers, you probably met him before. You've seen him on live streams and such. We went to college together. We stayed in the same dorm room freshman year. We did that all year, and that debatably it was only 9 months of the year. And also on top of that, besides sleeping, I almost said sleeping together, besides sleeping 3 to 4 feet away from each other, we were both knocked out, that doesn't count. We maybe saw each other maybe 2 to 3 hours a day. By the end of that year, we had survived, but god dang, we were bickering. We were close to ending our... You know what? We were still best friends, but it was like, hey man, we need a summer break. And we actually lived together in an apartment the next year, but that's an apartment. That's a huge improvement from, of course, the dorm room. But anyway, going back to my analogy, we did that for 9 months of the year. We saw each other maybe 3 hours a day. Now, taking into perspective, Virtus Pro, these guys were hanging out, I guess maybe not in the same area, but playing together 8 to 10 hours a day. Hardcore scrims, pracs, also traveling together, LAN events for 4 years. They did what me and Noah did times like, I don't know, at least 4. But on top of that, think about what me and my freshman year dorm mate did. 3 hours a day we saw each other max. These guys were hanging out, playing in the same scrims with each other, listening to each other's voices ring in their ears for 8 to 10 hours a day, probably 5 days a week, for 4 years. Of course there's going to be freaking problems. There's going to be qualms. There's going to be squirrels. And on top of that, I don't like the debate. I know you guys are probably on my side when I say this kind of thing. Can you blame the guys for wanting to leave and go somewhere else, or maybe not producing results after that long? They were one of the better teams we saw back in the day. Yes, they might have lulled in results ever since early 2016, but can you imagine, just for a second, put it into perspective, whatever your name is, you watching, Adam, Sam, Billy, Jake, that's my name, but imagine just meet eyes with me for a second. Imagine some guy walks up to you off the street and says, hey, by the way, I know I don't know you, but for the next 4 years, I want you to play CSGO for me. Play 7-8 hours a day. I'm going to pay you 20 grand a month. And I'm going to give you a 4-year contract. Just sign here. First of all, of course you're going to sign. No doubt. Of course I'll play with these guys for the next 4 years. Of course, sir, I will play CSGO. I will play video games for you, sir. For $20,000 a month, sir. But instantly we saw the backlash of that, right? It was almost instantaneous. These guys signed the biggest CSGO contracts ever signed. It was all over the news, and almost instantaneously, within 5 or 6 months, no results, still no results. And then, of course, after I think it was a 2-year mark, we saw Taz leave, 2.5-year mark, just recently here, Snacks left. I don't blame these guys at all. I don't think any of us, literally no one watching this video either, can imagine getting handed $20,000 a month and not just wanting to sit back, relax, and you don't need to produce results. It's not like anyone's forcing you to. You signed a contract. Unless the contract said, hey, by the way, guys, you got to win a major every year, which I highly doubt it did. Of course they're going to get a bit lazy and things are going to settle down. And you're going to, of course, you're just going to, I'm looking for the right word. but you guys probably know what I mean. So anyway, sorry about that. See what I mean, guys? I can't respond to chat because if someone said anything during that, I would just reel off in different directions. But of course, you're gonna get a bit tired of going at it the same way you did when you first loved the game, you first joined the game. So of course, Virtus Pro here acquires Sketchy. I think an improvement from Morels. Morels is a stand-in player, stood in for 3 events, I believe. Maybe it could be less or more. Did not do much. Statistically speaking, their worst player. So a definite improvement for the future. Then they go to IEM Shanghai with Morels, his last event there, and they do pretty well. They sweep 5 power, and then they also beat HR. Now we can debate about HR. Apparently Hellraisers did not have Woxic, but they had Fej staying for the team. Fej, if you guys don't know, Fej was actually a former Denial member. Team Denial was a North American org, I believe, like 2 or 3 years ago. Never paid the guys, and he came back out of nowhere to stand in for this team. So great to see he's still playing. But they beat HR. Which again, debatable, and then they lose to Tai Lu in what could be called a closer series, both their losses going in overtime. That's with Morels. And I know a lot of you guys are going to say Tai Lu, not too great of a team, and they still lost to him. But I think it's a sign, right? Tai Lu's been one of those teams, historically speaking, especially when they first came into the scene. Was it 2015 where they shocked some teams? I think they beat like Na'Vi, one of their first big events in, because no one knew the Chinese playstyle. This might be a reiteration of that, a little bit of shock factor, and it's also home territory, which does definitely have an effect. In IEM, at Shanghai, or in Shanghai, Virtus Pro loses to Tai Lu. Can't take too much from that. So a definite improvement going forward with Virtus Pro. I think if these guys can actually stay consistent, I don't see them making any major changes, and I've talked to you guys about this in the past. I would love to see a Virtus Pro gut, just like NIP. And I feel like I need to keep on reiterating my opinion does not matter, but I think what I want to see from a viewership standpoint is gutting rosters. Just get rid of the old timers and make them go somewhere else like Taz, like Snacks, and love the game again, perform, build yourself some new teammates, branch out. And again, my opinion does not matter, but I would love to see that. Just get Neo and Bialy out of there. Please. Give them a chance somewhere else. Give them some room to breathe. See how they perform. Same with NIP. I'd love to see Get Right and Forrest leave that roster. Mainly Get Right. I would love to see him somewhere else. I would love to see how they interact. I know these scenes, though, are so close, especially the Polish scene, because when you think about it, these guys are Polish legends. Of course they don't want to play with some kids from the Polish scene who are on the come-up. Of course you don't want to. That's probably a big pride hit. Big hit to your ego right there. But I would love to see it. I think if Taz or Snacks can make it work, maybe we see that in the future. Virtus Pro kind of gut that roster. And it's kind of a sad end to the notorious, legendary 5-man team, Virtus Pro, who stood for so long together. But maybe it needs to happen. And of course, it's going to bite Virtus Pro in the butt. Like, oh man, we had that gigantic signing for 4 years of a legendary team in CSGO, and it fell apart within a few months. But still, let the guys live. And it's probably not the organization. It's probably the players. And I don't blame them one bit. Do you think I blame Neo or Bialy or Pasha for staying on the team? God, I could never do that. First of all, Pasha's the best, like the funniest guy ever. The things he tweets out and gets away with, you can tell the community loves the guy. We love him, right? This guy sees no backlash. The other week, he tweeted out a picture of him in front of the Virtus Pro, I think it's their house, has a giant picture of the 5 guys. And they're welcoming Sketchy, and this dude takes a picture of himself in front of the wall, and he literally says in the tweet, maybe I'll pull it up for you guys, because Sketchy's going to be their primary opper, and he's going to be, now Posh will be their secondary opper, and he literally tweets out, oh, now I can only shoot shots from my big Dragon Lord in my pants. It's like what the, I was like, am I reading this right? But I love it. Like, that's what we love about the CSGO scene. No one cares because they love him so much. He's been around. He deserves that respect. And I don't blame these guys for not leaving the salaries. He's got a family. But I would love to see the team succeed, and I'm sure you guys would as well. So, speaking of players I'd love to see succeed, we also had Movistar announced. I think it was actually MSI MGA, kind of a weird combination of letters there. It's going to be a tournament going to be held in the Barclays Center in New York, and apparently Movistar is actually in the qualifiers for that. If you guys don't know Movistar, of course, Mixwell, that's the newest team he joined. I think with former Movistar members Alex, there's a guy, his name starts with an S. I don't have the roster pulled up for you guys. It's definitely a big move, and I'm only talking about this because Mixwell is one of my favorite players of all time. I know there's always a question when I live stream Q&As. People are always like, who are your favorite players? Let's get this down, guys, just so if I ever live stream this, you guys can know. Hiko and Mixwell will forever be my favorite players. Hiko still on Rogue. Mixwell, formerly of Optic, is when I loved him most, then went to G2 for a short stint. Now Mixwell is with Movistar. Those will always be my favorite players. Love the guys to death. I don't know how Hiko is behind the scenes, but I think we can all tell that Mixwell is probably the most genuine guy ever. Like, I hope to meet the guy one day, but just seems like a genuine guy. So he joined this Movistar rider roster out of nowhere. Of course, he had that short stint with G2. He was obviously not an option for some reason for their future roster, the new French super team who we've not heard from ever since. I hope they show up at the major and can do something really substantial, because this would be the second French super team on G2 that fails if they don't, and I think I'd question their future. I would still love to see Smiths as a coach and someone else join, like Mixwell as a backup opper. I don't know, just an idea. It's what he wants to be, apparently. But anyway, they have a huge signing from over there at Movistar. By the way, Movistar is the #1, I believe, telecom company. I believe it's some #1 company over in Spain, so they can afford these guys. And apparently, all of a sudden, they want to branch out. They want to spend the money. They buy these guys. I've never seen it before. I mentioned in an episode, they have a huge celebration for Mixwell joining, like huge. Bring him out on a stage in front of the media crew, their own media crew, because that's what they do, their media for their main occupation. And I think it's interesting because people kind of complain, and the main Reddit response you see is, oh, what a downgrade. But I think there's definitely two sides to every story, and I love this video because you can actually analyze. You have the time to analyze that. When I make the announcement of CSGO news episode, I'm not going to sit down and say, well, there's also a good side of this story. I can't really have the time to explain that. But you guys can probably guess it as well. This gives the guy a perfect chance to keep up on his CSGO game. Now, I think there's 3 dimensions to this. The first of which, it keeps him practicing CSGO. It keeps him in touch with the game, keeps him improving. And that's the biggest thing, because he had no chance to go to the major. There was no chance. I mean, there obviously was. Cloud9 wanted him, and then I think another team wanted him. North wanted him. So pretty crazy. This guy... God, I love Mixwell. This guy turns down practically 2 major offers with Cloud9. He literally took to Twitter and said on 2 different occasions, hey Cloud9, I will stand in for you whenever you need me, but I don't want to play for an American team. Like, ouch. That should show you a good sign of the future of North America right now. And also, after winning DreamHack, what was it, guys? Was it DreamHack Valencia? I think. I could be wrong. My memory's sucky. But it's decent when it comes to CSGO, I guess. That's the only thing I can remember nowadays is CSGO results. But I think they won DreamHack Valencia with North. And of course, you have to imagine they wanted him. And he took to Twitter and said, glad we won the title. My stint with North is done. It's like, wow, this guy can be wanted by the biggest American organization and a growing European team he just won an event with, who probably is going to offer him a decent salary. He says no, he says no, he joins Movistar. So #1, it keeps him in the game, keeps him practicing, keeps him up to speed. #2, pride. We see this heavily with MiBR. Although MiBR is now just barely over half Brazilian. They're now 2 Americans, a Serbian, and 3 Brazilians. It's not really made in Brazil. It's like made in Brazil, Serbian. I don't know. Either way, you see that huge pride with those guys, Fallen and Cold and Fur. And all the Brazilian guys. That's the one thing those guys really dedicate themselves to, is Brazilian pride. I think it's great for Mixwell to get that chance. You know, obviously being from Spain, Movistar, a Spanish organization. It's going to be cool to see him actually do that. So those are your 2 main reasons. Keeps him up to speed, a little bit of pride there. And on top of that, it gets him paid. And it gets him a great road to keeping inside the game until some other team offers him. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what he's waiting out for. I think maybe there's something behind the scenes. Did he want to go back home, closer to home? I know when he was originally with the Optic roster, I could be remembering this wrong. I think a lot of the issue with the former Optic roster, when it first tried to go European, this might not have been Mixwell. This might have been other guys who joined, like Alu and Freiburg. They wanted to stay EU because they wanted to be closer to home. I'm not sure how Mixwell feels about that, but that might be a thing. He can probably be pretty close to home now. So those are your 3 reasons. I hope to see him back on a Tier 1 team in the future, and I think we can guarantee he will be. Super happy for the guy, though. And speaking of Optic, I guess one last story on the whole Optic situation before we go into my favorite story of the day, which will be the doc situation. We have, of course, have to mention Optic India. If you guys remember, it was several months ago. They now announced their new Indian roster, which I think is great for the organization. I'm not going to talk too much trash about this because you can get a lot of backlash for that. It's obviously a subpar roster. I think they trialed about 2,000 people in the Indian scene, which is amazing. That's great to see. They nailed it down to 8 people. Those 8 people competed for the last 5 or 6 spots. So it was cool to see. Obviously trying to branch out. The Optic organization owned by Hector. Love the guy. Love his content. I love Optic. You're not going to hear me talking bad about Optic, so I don't want to trash talk. Those guys are awesome, especially Hector and Hitch, if you guys don't know the Optic organization. But it's been great to see them try and branch out. They have tried, over the past year and a half or so, they have branched out into tumultuous leagues and esports, and they're doing a great job. I think this is definitely one of their opportunities to do so. I don't think the roster is going to be anything substantial ever, but it's still great to do. And I think it represents what an organization should really try to do, and that's strictly to branch out, not for the sole purpose of earning money, but for the sole purpose of trying to get notoriety and actually being recognized as an international club, an international organization. I think Hector's doing a great job of that. So that's all I'll say. They actually did win. I think it was a Monsoon Madness series. And I talked about this because it's pretty obvious to tell that the Indian scene is not anywhere near development because of the grand finals, this grand slam, whatever they called it for a Monsoon Madness. The grand finals, the first place prize was, I think just over 200 USD, $200. So, but still, I think it's a great thing Optic's doing. I hope to see them in the future and see what this roster develops into. I think it's one of those few rosters out there, like we see in the lower tier scenes, which will always strictly be an Indian roster. I don't think they'll ever bring in anyone else of any other descent. Let me get some water really quick, and then we'll continue. All right, just had to get some water. I got to give credit where credit is due. I think I'm like 30 minutes in or so, and the voice is shot. I really do give credit to Thorne and Richard Lewis. Of course, they talk apart from themselves, and I think they don't talk as fast as I do, but still, it's a definite strain on the throat here. But thank you guys all for still watching, if you guys are. The situation I want to talk about for a long time. You know what? I know there's going to definitely be comments about how I wear my headset, so just to kind of preface with you guys, if I ever do this and wear the headset the way it's supposed to, I can't hear my own voice and I talk way too loud. So that's why whenever I stream, you guys will always see me doing that. So hope you guys don't get annoyed by that in the future. We'll just take them off for now. I don't need to hear myself speak. But I do want to talk about the dock situation. Now, I'm going to go into full detail about it. You guys can skip a few minutes if you want to. Obviously, it kind of came to an end. Not really a finite end this past weekend, or a couple weekends ago. If you guys don't know Doc, currently 17 years old. His birthday is coming up very shortly. It might have been today. I knew the date at one point in time, but he's 17 years old. Gonna be probably a pro player in the future of CSGO. Right now, you'd probably classify him as a semi-pro or a pugger. He plays Faceit matches, and he will be back in Faceit officially once he turns 18. If you guys don't know his deal, a lot of suspected clips of him cheating in the past, and alongside that, a lot of sketchy things that have been said on his Twitter. I think most recently it was actually, his Twitter, his tweet that got deleted later on, where he said that his dad put a lock password on his computer. It was later deleted because people thought he was lying, and he was actually later that weekend playing matches, which was a bit odd. Then in the past, he's also said that his parents are both working parents, which I definitely believe, but he actually, his dad works from home, and he plays CSGO in the room right next to his dad, and that's why he can't use his microphone. If you guys know his history, for a while there in Faceit matches before they paused his Faceit membership because of this, he was actually using a friend as his in-game microphone, which I'm not going to lie is weird, but it's also very impressive. But it also can, I imagine, can cause some very frustrating situations for his teammates. There was definitely some clips out there that even he posted where that lack of communication resulted in his team losing some rounds. So that's kind of the TLDR of the situation. There's also several cheating clips of him out there, and because he wouldn't show himself, because he wouldn't talk in game, people thought he was cheating, which still could be possible. It kind of reminds you of old people out there that kind of get these allegations because they're fast and they come up out of nowhere. Stewie2K being the first, having the sketchy clips that people were like, oh, this guy shoots through the smokes, he's got to be cheating. Then there was Rops, who was hitting insane things on Faceit as well. And now we have, of course, the new 17-year-old up-and-coming talent, which people have to, of course, allege is cheating, which, again, he might be. You never know. But most recently, it was, I think, you know what? I'll talk about it. I'll drop names, I guess. I'm not trying to accuse him of anything. It was actually Richard Lewis and Thorne who did not say he was cheating, okay? I want to get that clear. They did not say he was cheating, but they definitely insinuated towards that. I think that's fair to say. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Hopefully I don't want to piss those guys off. They know way too much. They have way too in depth of knowledge. I can't debate those guys on anything, and I'm always impressed by their content, so please, I'm not calling you guys out at all. But I think during that episode, you definitely insinuated that he was cheating, and I would agree there's definitely some very, very sketchy clips about that. But then most recently, to kind of combat that, and there's been this whole issue with the community being split between like Doc and like against Richard Lewis and Thorne, and saying things that Richard Lewis hadn't said. There's just so many things I could say right now that I don't want to really get into. But anyway, most recently, of course, was the Faceit Netherlands event. Doc is actually from the Netherlands. He, of course, had, I'm sure, still a drive to go there. And so there were two big questions around this because, yes, it was awesome to see him there, right? Faceit's doing a great job, in my own opinion, making these players, grow them up into some potential successful talents. And they invited him to the event. It was going to be a LAN simulation. So he had a webcam, or at least they saw him, and he had a microphone, most importantly. He played Faceit matches with like Zai Wu and Innocent, or against some of those guys, and he did very well. His first game dropped a 30 bomb. I think he dropped a couple high 20 bombs as well. Did very well, especially being put in front of everyone out of nowhere. It was to simulate a LAN environment. Now, it's nothing like a LAN because there was no crowd. You could argue whatever you want, but he still looked impressive. And this is to kind of combat what Richard Lewis and all those guys have been saying. And in their defense, it does not prove too much, because we've seen plenty of times in the past that really good cheaters can also be really good players, like Flusha. That's all I'll say about that. And so in the future, I think here's our next step. We're going to find out if he ever goes to real events, if he's the same nutty guy hitting all these nutty clips at LAN, or even at online events where he actually has a microphone. Those are the next few testers. And then there's always the debate as well. I think Richard Lewis and Thorne made really good points throughout it, but I think there's good points on both sides of the story, which is the problem when it comes to me riding the fence about this. But on top of that, it's definitely suspicious because after all this time, like, you have to think about it. Like, okay, your parents were not okay with you using a microphone in the game of CSGO, allegedly because he was being too loud, but you don't have to be loud when you're playing CSGO, man. Like, when his friend was on the microphone, he was like literally whispering the callouts. You can play CSGO and call callouts very calmly. And so he used that as an excuse, and it was suspicious because your parents won't let you use a microphone. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. Your parents won't let you use a microphone to play a video game, but your parents will let you travel to a LAN event to meet up with some random people to play video games. And to be honest, guys, this guy might just be a freaking mastermind. He's doing it so right. He stopped responding to me on Twitter because he probably figured, rightly so, that I make a video about whatever he tells me. And so he stopped responding to me before the Faceit event, so I kind of figured he wouldn't go, but he did. So he obviously knows what he's doing. And I cannot wait to see the future of this guy. I really can't. And very lastly, what I'll talk about very lastly is, I think people also need to realize, no matter what side you're on, the shoes this guy is in. I'm 32. Or 23, whatever way you want to look at it. This guy's 17. Picture yourself, a lot of you guys are younger, a lot of you guys are 13, 14, you're in high school, lower grades. But just try and picture yourself, if you're older than that, you guys know what I mean. Picture yourself as a junior or senior in high school. You're 17 years old, you're trying to be really good at this game and go professional and make a living playing a video game, and you're being thrust in the limelight. Thousands of stream viewers, thousands of Twitter followers, YouTube watchers, and all of a sudden you're under the limelight on the Reddit forums, on Twitter, on all these other videos, people who are making videos about you, myself included. It's got to be pretty nerve-wracking. So no matter what comes of it, whether he's a drama-making, cheating mother fricker, I give him credit. But if he's legit and he still knows how to make drama, I give him all the more credit. So next step, we're going to see, he does turn 18 sometime this September. His statement he made was, to me at least, I don't know if he made it publicly, and it could be a lie. He said when he turns 18, he'll move out of his house to an apartment to play CSGO. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. Those are my overall opinions. And again, I don't mean to take sides against anyone out there. So, and that does kind of bring me to a next topic about Richard Lewis and the Loba situation. I won't be talking about that. I don't think it's really worth it. Yeah, that's just kind of an interesting situation. Some things happen behind the scenes. I don't know. I hate seeing people be so hateful. And it's just kind of sad because we've had so much. I will agree. It was actually Vince. I'll try and link his video down below. No promises because I'll probably forget this far into the video. But there's definitely way too much hate out there. You can't let it affect you. But at the same time, you got to realize these guys that have been chased out or are being slowly chased out have been around in the scene for so long. I can put up with it because I'm not even technically in the scene. I don't do as good of stuff as they do. And I've only been putting up with it for such a short period of time. So it's back in my day for them, they were probably really resilient too. They probably didn't care about comments, but after time, it weighs on you. And I really do feel for those guys. And you probably know who I'm talking about, but it's sad to see. Yeah. Anyway, really briefly here as well as we close out the video, the last few minutes, last 15, 20 minutes here, I do want to touch on very briefly HLTV rankings. If you guys did see my video on it, I did touch on these very briefly. I think there's a huge fall off after the top 7. HLTV's newest rankings for July, maybe I'll post them on screen, maybe I won't. I'll try and, again, I'm going to try and memorize for this kind of show, but I want to also be relaxed and kind of just open. I think Astralis, Na'Vi, FaZe Clan, Liquid, Astralis, Na'Vi, FaZe Clan, Mouse Sports, Liquid, Big. Mouse Sports and Liquid might be switched. Those are your top 6, and I think after the top 6, even after the top 5, there's after the top 2, there's a huge fall off. Frick me. I'm so sorry, guys. I keep on correcting myself because I keep on thinking more about it. After Astralis, there's an obvious huge fall off. By far and away, number 1 team going to the major. 8 events ever since January, winning 4 of them, of course, most notably and most recently, E-League Premier. They looked dominant. Absolutely amazing. Like, people don't give some of those members enough credit. It's just so hard to choose a weak link. Like, God, that team is so good. And if they don't win this major, I'm going to be upset. But I think there's definitely something to it because people are giving these guys almost too much credit. And I think when it comes to the major, we got 4 or 5 teams who can definitely take it off Astralis. And remember, boys, you win a couple maps, you're done. And so I think big things can happen. And I mean that unironically. Big things can always happen. We saw it at Cologne. So Astralis, by far and away number 1. I think Na'Vi, by far and away number 2. You guys know their most recent results. Their 3 in a row as well was most impressive. Star Series, CSGO Asian Championships, and then another one. They won 3 in a row. And then, of course, they got top 4. Top 4 as well at E-League Premier, unless I'm blanking. Either way, some great results. They won 3 in a row as well. 3 Premier tournaments in a row. A very solid, consistent roster, obviously making good use out of nowhere. Electronic really popping up these last few months and becoming a little mini simple. So, number 1 by far and away, Astralis. Number 2 by far and away, of course, Na'Vi. And I think, again, you could really split these up by far and away, all these teams. I don't mean, again, my own opinion. FaZe Clan, really consistent team. They proved themselves to be a 4-man core that can play with any 5th. And I mean that interchangeably with now Olaf Meister being back. Of course, they're a 5-man core, and they're probably best with Olaf Meister in the roster. But it was really cool to see with Get Right as well as Croman, they won events and got to grand finals, which is insane to think about. If any other team out there lost their best player, think about where that would put them. Like even a team like Na'Vi who has an electronic, you take away any of these teams' top player, it'd be hard to nail down a lot of top players now because I think Liquid is very evenly spread. But still, take away one major player from every team and they break, especially right now. Like Cloud9 MiBR, right? You take away a Fallen or a Fur or a Cold Zero, MiBR's done. You take away Rush or Automatic, Cloud9 is dead because they would have they couldn't even go to the major because they wouldn't have a 3-man. They wouldn't have a 3-man majority anymore who's been to the last major. But you get what I mean. So I think FaZe Clan, amazing roster. Olaf Meister looked really good at E-League Premier. No one else could keep up. And I think once the team, obviously at the major, probably figures that out, definite top 3 team. Those 3 teams, by far and away, your 3 teams. After that, technically, you could say a huge fall off. So let's go into Liquid first. Liquid, of course, coming off E-League Premier, looking really good. Taco, unfortunately, lost his dad, but still looked consistent throughout the event. Looked very good against Na'Vi in the semifinals. They lost really bad to Astralis in the finals. And also a very inconsistent team. I talked about this very early on in the episode. You can't really, I can't see them being a top 5 team. I can't see any American team being a top 5 team, especially after their ESL Cologne performance. It goes to show you that at any point in time, these guys can lose to just about anyone, but also at any point in time, they can beat just about anyone, I think, besides FaZe Clan and Astralis, who they never really gone up against and actually perform well against. So probably deserving a top 10. I think a lot of teams right now outside the top 3 are probably going to be inconsistent, which Liquid is one of them. I think it's a fair statement. Mouse Sports coming off a 9th through 12th place finish, I believe, at Elite Premier and a top 4 finish at ESO Cologne. I could have those reversed, so please stay with me, guys. I'm trying to memorize this stuff. Either way, those are the two finishes they have ever since Snacks joined are a top 4 and a top 12. So obviously top 12 not making out of groups. A team that I think definitely made an improvement from Sticko, and I would love to see them in the future, but I'm not really sure how solidified that future is. But again, I do really like seeing Snacks there as well, try and find his role. I think a lot of people would argue that it wasn't necessarily a huge improvement, but still definitely one in the right direction. And I can't wait to see this team do what they do. And I think most notably and historically speaking, they've been a really weird team at tournaments. In my own opinion, at least the events I've seen, they've always been the team to either lose out brutally in groups or make playoffs. And also, whenever I come to talk about them, I always think about they're the quarterfinal team. They can make quarterfinals, they can't make it past it. So I think honestly at the major, these guys need a pretty solid run, pretty solid route to get to the finals, and I can't see it happening, and it'd be a pretty big upset. And then very lastly, in the top 6, we have Team Big. Of course, their big performance was their 2nd place finish at ESL Cologne, and I think they definitely proved themselves to be a team. And sorry, if the camera was shaking that entire time, I'm so sorry. I shake my legs a lot. But I think these guys proved themselves to be a really big hype team, and I like that. I like that a lot because this is a team who, if they have the backing of the crowd, I think they can do just about anything. You look at the teams they beat that event, ESL Cologne, and you can really tell these guys have a chance no matter what. We see this a lot in Dota 2. Teams, because Dota 2 actually initiated their new major and minor system. They have majors and minors, and they have a new thing called the Dota Pro League or the Dota Pro Circuit, or Dota Circuit Pro, something like that. And it's really cool because throughout the entire circuit, they had like 10 different teams win a minor or win a major, which is pretty big events for them. And I think Big is now the iconic team for that. And I really hope they don't fail out because, of course, they have to get to the major qualifier to get to the major. And I think they have a huge upset potential for these teams because you look at the list of teams they beat. They beat G2, French super team. They beat Na'Vi, and they beat MiBR. Debatable MiBR, obviously, we kind of noticed then that their downfall, their struggles. But still, arguably at least three solid top 10 teams all in one run was amazing to see. Absolutely amazing. So I cannot wait to see them on the final stage if they do make it. And I think it's definitely a team now with that experience and with that hype around them. I mean, of course, it was crowd favorite, right? It was over there and they had that kind of a hometown advantage, but still, I love it. They're kind of close to home anyway for the major. So I cannot wait to see Team Big. And I think, like I was going to say previously, I kind of divided it into sections like 1, 2, and 3. There's big gaps between those 3, and especially a big gap between 3 and everyone else. But I think the biggest gap fall off becomes right around MiBR. And I'll show you guys hopefully on screen as well. If you guys don't know, I'll try and think of some names out there that I saw in the top 10. G2, NRG, Tyloo are the teams that solely follow MiBR. MiBR in that 7th place in the rankings. And I think MiBR only has this ranking because of their roster and their potential. I know there's a relevancy for these rankings, but I think MiBR is definitely the marker for a big fall off for these teams. The rest of them, NRG, Tyloo, Virtus Pro, G2. G2 we haven't heard much from. NRG, Tyloo, and Virtus Pro are only in the top 15 right now. NRG and Tyloo only in the top 10 right now because of IEM Shanghai and the runs they made there. So that's all I'll really say about that. I think a huge fall off now. When we go to the major teams, when you look at the current rankings, if you guys want to go to HLTV, huge fall off after MiBR. But definitely some surprise teams in there. One of them I talked about was actually the Imperial. The Imperial looks great online for qualifiers so far. They finalized their newest roster also this past week as well. They finalized Haji from, of course, former ex-Envious, and Poon. Poon from Skitlight, if you guys recognize him. I don't think you probably would. Surprisingly, they did really well with them. They beat Tempo Storm. And they beat Tempo Storm, their 3-man core, and their new roster of Zaiwu and Happy, which is pretty awesome. So it's very cool to see a new, and I mean, it's impressive because, and again, I think overall, the last thing I'll talk about is the Imperial because they're my most underrated team inside the top 25. I think they should be a top, I think they earned it. I think they should be a top 15 team. And I think it would have been really cool to see them or Fragsters or someone come up out of the European minor. But unfortunately enough, the European minor is just so competitive. So that kind of sucks. I hope in the future maybe the major system changes and we see more teams. I would love to see like 4 teams come from the European minor. They deserve it. Anyway, though, if you saw their run, the Imperial at the Star Series Season 6 qualifier, they 2-0 swept some amazing teams. Space Soldiers and Optic were the best of them. Optic did not have config, but Optic had Nico from Heroic, their best player. So still really cool wins. Tempo Storm, Epsilon, and one other team. They 2-0 swept all of them. They only lost maps the entire qualifiers, I believe, in the finals to Fragsters. Fragsters, a rising team themselves. Kind of unfortunate to see the Imperial run come to an end, but still a team who beat some very good teams online, and I think they're definitely underrated. And also, keep in mind, I think it's more impressive because they're a brand new roster. They were a 3-man core, just got rid of Crystal and Tensky. They brought in Poon from Skitlight and Haji from X Envious, who in my opinion seems like a great guy on Twitter. I'm sure I hopefully be friends with him. He seems like a really cool guy, definitely a developing player, but definitely not their best player by a long shot. And these guys are doing great things. So an underrated team. I hope them the best in the future. So that's it for HLTV rankings. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about the rankings. I think huge fall-offs is what I got to say. And I guess I could very lastly touch on some few things. Definitely harder to talk for an hour than I thought. Not only my voice, but I talk so fast. I think talking for an hour is kind of a difficult thing. So hopefully in the future it's not going to be an issue. I can only imagine right now the render time. If you guys were curious, want some more details, I know that Thorne and Richard Lewis talk about real life things and things outside CSGO for their episodes, but for now, the first 2 episodes, I don't think you guys want to hear about my real life probably. It's not really that interesting, and so I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. It's kind of just, in my opinion, a waste of time for you guys to listen to me. Thorne and Richard Lewis live cooler lives than I do, pretty much. So, but yeah, very lastly, of course, also kind of certified or finalized this past week as well was the Heroic and North swap, which I think for North going forward, I think North is a top 15 team, might be top 10 as well. A sleeper team definitely for the major because they made huge improvements. Mertz, ever since the acquirement of Mertz, he has been their most underwhelming player. He was an academy member for North and they pulled him up because of that. I think they wanted to stay in-house. Definitely a potential, he's a very young player. Definitely potential in the future, and you'll never find me saying a player does not have potential. So I want to give these guys compliments. They're all very good at what they do. Mertz has potential in the future, just not good enough right now to hang with that core roster. And North is now acquiring Nico, and they might be a sleeper team in the major. Highly unlikely, but definitely an improvement in my opinion. And Heroic, being one of the teams who failed to make the major qualifier, it does make you think about, were they a team that maybe talked to Faceit to make changes? You never know. That being North, not Heroic. Did North, did Cloud9, did Virtus Pro, did they talk to Faceit and say, hey, can you maybe change the rulebook? I'm thinking about picking up a player later on. A player who played for another team in the minor qualifier. What do you think? I'll leave that controversy probably to next episode because I need some more content for next episode. But just a thing to think about. There's an organization out there that's suspected of fiddling with the rulebooks, and it could have been one of them. What do you guys think? I'm curious what you guys think because I'm not sure how the system works. And again, I'll talk about this in the next episode as well. But it was actually Thorne who brought it up first. When it was first talked about, he said Virtus Pro acquired Snatchy from AGO. AGO was in the minor qualifier. And I'm not sure how it works, but I didn't look back if AGO made the minor, and I'm not sure if this system works I'm not sure if you even went to a minor qualifier, can you then not play? Could you then in the past not play for a team? Like if you went to the minor qualifier, not the minor. Like say you went to the minor qualifier and failed to qualify, could you then play for a major team? I'm not sure how far back the system goes because in my own opinion, if you play the minor qualifier and you don't qualify for the minor, you should be able to play for any team you want because that's so far back. You can't be a top tier player and not make the minor or a really, really good player. In most cases, 99.9% of cases. But anyway, so a huge improvement for North. They could be a sleeper team. We haven't heard much from them in a long time, so we'll see how that works out. Very lastly, I want to talk about today, wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching, seriously. I enjoyed this because not only does it give me something to do on the weekends, it gets me really thinking about CSGO. I love this channel, so hopefully you guys enjoy it, and hopefully leave a comment down below how I can fix this. I know graphically, layout-wise, not the best thing, but if you guys can hear my voice and we can talk about CSGO, that's the ultimate goal. So if we can break like 37 likes or whatever I said earlier, that's a great goal. So if you guys want this series to continue, please do me a favor, drop a like. Especially if you guys are listening right now, I like you. But very lastly, I do want to talk about Yanko going to MiBR. Do I think it's a solution to the team? No. I think it's weird, but I love his analysis, and so I think it's a sad and a happy time. And it came out earlier this week as well that Yanko had the offer ever since June. We don't know if the offer was bumped up, if it was improved in any way, and that's why he finally took it. But he made it sound like he had the offer in June, the same offer he had in August when he finally accepted, and he really thought it over. Of course, he worked some events, some big events in between that time, and it really is cool. This guy, no one probably in his shoes besides Yanko would have questioned it for that long to join MiBR, the best Brazilian team, arguably one of the best American teams easily, to join as their coach. No one would question that. Definitely a six-figure salary for him, but he questioned it for over a month because he knows his future as an analyst. And I hope as a community, when this coaching stint ends, as I think it will, and he will come back to be an analyst because that is what he is really good at, even though I hope he loves coaching, maybe in the future continues to be a coach, but I think he'll come back and be an analyst eventually. But again, I hope he goes really well for him at MiBR. But he questioned it because he knew what he was good at. And that's really cool to see, because I think most people in that situation, six figures, coach MiBR, heck yeah, I'm in. Now his past, I can't really analyze his past pro experience. I don't think it was it wasn't hugely impressive, but he was a past pro player, which I think is definitely a great starting criteria to be a coach nowadays, and it definitely puts him ahead of many others out there for options, although he has no prior coaching experience. So that'll be interesting, especially because he does have a hefty accent. It's gotten better over time, but he does have an accent, and now you have a Serbian accented coach who does speak very good English, and you have 3 Brazilians, and you have 2 Americans who speak English. There will obviously, maybe there already have been some tiny communication issues, but I think in the future, I cannot wait to see where this goes. And I think this will really set a milestone, set a stepping stone for future coaches out there. And I think we're starting to approach that period in CSGO or whatever the next game is going to be, where we see prior players transition out of CSGO, and they're going to want those roles, right? They're going to want to be commentators, probably not that's the real throat-wrenching stuff. They're going to want to be commentators. They're going to want to be, most of all, analysts and coaches. And so this is a stepping stone, and this is going to be a mile marker for many people to follow in his tracks if this goes well for Yanko, and I wish him the best. Do I think it's the answer solution? I don't think so. I think there's going to be always some issues in that roster. And I think toxicity and morale of the players has influenced teams more than ever this past year. We've seen so many rosters break up because of it, and there's so many things that I don't know, but I found out a few things out there, and there's so many things that you guys don't know that happen behind the scenes of these teams that are such minute things, personality or morality-wise, that break teams apart. It's shocking. So I hope Yanko does well on the team. In terms of content and personality, publicly, Tarek and Yanko, the duo, can't wait to see it. And Fur has been hilarious on stream. But wishing them the best of luck, guys. That's going to do it for the first This Week in CSGO News episode. If you guys did enjoy, please do me a favor, leave a like. It shows me you guys enjoy the content. I don't care about donations, but if you guys do want to donate to further the series, that will be in the description as well. And thank you guys ahead of time if you guys do support the show. As I said before, I don't need donations to continue. I love doing this. I like doing this. I love venting to you guys. And if you guys listened all the way through, feel free to comment down below. Jake, I listened all the way through, and leave a comment down below what you guys thought. And please debate with me in the comment section. I will not reply to every comment, but I will actually see them all. So thank you all for watching. And also, if you want to comment topics to talk about or questions to answer in the future, do me a favor and do that right now. So hope you guys all enjoyed. My name is Jake, and I will see you all next week for This Week in CSGO episode number 2. And I'll see you guys then. Voice crack. Bye.